And you are very welcome. This is The Beautiful Truth with Fintan Dunn on regeneromics.com. Thanks for joining me. We're going to have some fun here as we celebrate the achievements of Neil Armstrong. The unknown achievements more than the known. You see, embedded in Neil's life are the solutions to some of the deepest mysteries we're facing. Life, death, the nature of space itself. And who better to turn to than Neil Armstrong, our most celebrated spaceman. He left us clues to work it out. And this is those answers and those clues revealed to you. Now, back in 1969, quantum computers, time-defying quantum entanglement and quantum holographic surfaces, this was all science fiction, not science. But even then, Neil knew where he was going. Neil was on a quest, an appointment with destiny. He left us clues which, if uncovered, would show him to be the greatest polar explorer of all time. Polar, we'll cover that. That clue is discovered and you will see that. You know, there's something about human beings that we set ourselves these incredible goals. That's Shackleton's expedition there. And we have gone east and west and north and south and high and low on this planet. Extraordinary peak experiences. It was Robert Peary who was likely the first person to reach the geographic North Pole back in April of 1909. And Roald Amundsen was the first person to reach both the South Pole and the North Pole. He got to the South Pole in 1911 and he led the first air expedition to the North Pole in 1926. But Edmund Hillary, he went up before he went down. Edmund Hillary was a climber who reached the summit of Mount Everest in 1953. And then he reached the South Pole overland in 1958. But Hillary wasn't done with his polar explorations yet. In April of 85, an adventurer, Michael Chalmers-Dunn, led a trip to the geographic North Pole that included Edmund Hillary. And he would be accompanied by none other than Neil Armstrong. That's Michael Chalmers-Dunn in the centre with the flag. That's Hillary to his left. And to the right, that's Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong at the North Pole. I'm not saying that that's what makes Neil Armstrong the greatest polar explorer of all time. I mean, he's small potatoes compared to the guys around him. No. But in context, he's showing you how important pole is in working this stuff out. And he is and will be the solution. Mike Dunn later recounted that he learned a lot from Neil on the trip. Armstrong was notoriously limelight shy, and he was relatively silent about his lunar adventures. Hillary said that Neil defined himself as a pilot, engineer, geek sort of person. He was no showman. But when a howling whiteout snowstorm forced that group to hole up for 3 days in the intimacy of a Quonset hut on Ellesmere, Armstrong's ice finally broke. It was minus 40 degrees, the middle of nowhere, said Hillary later. You're virtually in outer space out there. And here's Neil Armstrong telling the story of what he did not that long before, almost 15 years previously. On the 21st of July 1969, Neil Armstrong had left his mark on the rear of our moon, and a North Polar expedition was the perfect venue to discuss all that. The world never realized Neil Armstrong was himself in that great tradition of polar explorers. And for the first time, we revealed that the moon was the perfect place to begin our off-planet ventures. Our world has more than 2 geometric poles, one north and south. It also has geometric quantum poles at right angles to our geographic rotation axis, precessionary right angle. The moon is one of those poles. So Neil Armstrong here on the left had already visited a South Pole. You see, we'd circumnavigated and climbed up and sledded our way to every peak and pole. We'd run out of extremities to seek, and our spirit had turned to the skies next. But the quantum realm was still a relatively obscure and virgin landscape when Armstrong set out for the moon to fulfill JFK's great dream. It was to be his quantum dream as well, and our solution to our quantum mysteries and the nature of space itself. But having said that, let me take it all back in the sense that, it's not praise. And I know Neil, it didn't sit well with Neil, praise. He was just a guy doing a job. And I acknowledge that. This isn't praise, this is acknowledgement. This is thanks to a guy who just went and did a job for us all. Accept that, Neil. That's all you were doing, but you were becoming mythic as you did it. See, what none of us realized was that space which we were now venturing into with Neil was the quintessential quantum zone. There are only two places that look like space looks like. That's space outside of the Earth and the inside of an atom. They have the same spatial characteristics. And we hadn't understood that that was the true underlying nature of space, that it was a quantum zone. That's an area which I've been exploring for 15 or almost 20 years. And like everybody else, we bumble on looking for solutions, but I did feel there was always something in the moon. I was onto that aspect of it. Why was that? Well, have you ever noticed that the moon and the sun, and you see them here, that, the moon is relatively close, 250,000 miles away. The sun is 93 million miles away, 4, 5, 6. We vary in distance from each of them. But they look the same size in the sky. Isn't that a bit of a coincidence? Really? Could it be that what we're seeing there is a manifestation of an underlying quantum reality, which is producing a sun and a moon that are the same size? Could be. In fact, that's what it is. Take a look at how close they actually match. And just imagine that if you were fond of putting a bet on, suppose I was to give you this bet. I'm going to program a computer to produce a sun and a moon in the sky for us, randomly. Just pick a size of sun, pick a size of moon, and I wonder what the odds would be on them being this close. I mean, they're relatively small in the sky, but to be this close, it always seemed to me that was a bit suspicious. That, particularly when you think that there is night and day, opposites, dualities. There's good and evil, there's left and right, there's rich and poor, there's happy and sad, there's light and dark, there's sun and moon. Surely there's an equivalence. I don't know, that's one of the answers that science doesn't have. I mean, science doesn't even want to answer that, and I've been saying, 14 years ago, that's the biggest mistake science ever made, was failing to answer that question. Why? Here's another one. Take a look at that dividing line down the middle there before we leave this picture of God. You see, there's a dividing line there too in your brain. Go back to that and check this again. On the right brain, we have features like art, creativity, imagination, intuition, insight, holistic and 3D thought, and control of the left-hand side of the body is in the right brain. Okay? And on the left we have analytic, logic, language, reasoning, science, written skills, numbers, and control of the right-hand side of the human body. There's a division across a plane there, and it's like an X shape, where the left controls the right and then the right controls the left. So, let's simplify it like this. Showing you the right brain, the self, mind, and space, and the left brain, which is the ego, matter, and time. There's space and time on opposite sides of a plane. And as you see there as well, there is a crossover where the left brain runs the right-hand side of the body. Would you believe that not only does your left brain run your right hand and your right brain run your left hand, but even your ears are cross-wired to the other side of the brain? I mean, your right ear is sitting in your right brain. Why wouldn't it just wire straight into the right brain there? Why wire the right ear over to the left-hand side? This is another question that science didn't seem to be interested in answering. And that's, why have I got a mirror plane running down the center of my body? Why have the higher organized life forms on Earth got this mirror plane running right down the middle of the body, including between the eyes, as you see here, in the brain? And if there's left and right, why can't there be sun and moon? You know, it's perfectly valid. And let's just see what that would look like here. Oh yeah, we see that during the month as the moon moves around. Oh yeah, we see that when there's an eclipse. We see that, sort of crescent thing going on. I wonder if it got anything to do with quantum stuff. Because maybe these crescents that we see in the sky are actually bleed through of a quantum reality. That this rotation and stuff is simply mirrors of some kind, producing these recognizable movements, shapes, etc. Maybe that's what's going on. And, speaking of eyes, isn't it funny how sometimes these spheres in the sky can look like an eye? Like here. Let's have a look at an eye, nice and close. And there you see the cornea. And there you see the smooth top of the eye there, seen side on. Now let's look at something else. It's called a sundog, before I show it to you. And it's like a sunset, but with special atmospherics, producing this incredible display. So that's a sun seen going down, and when the conditions are just right, you get this astonishing sundog. And I'll just go back to the cornea again. You see there's a light pole there right where the sun is. I'd like you to just look at the tip of that light pole there, and you see you're looking at the entry point into the eye. It lines up. Now I'd like you to raise your gaze up to that, stand on top of the eye there, as if it was a North Pole, and just focus your eye on that point there. Look how that shadowing matches. You see the shadowing there at that point where you see the rainbow effect. Matches the shape. See, there's a curious thing when you look at certain shapes side on, or things side on, a new appearance is found. Well, there's that black hole again in the center of the eye. I wonder what it would be like if you could shine a light in there. Like your optician does. If you could shine a light in there and have a look around and see what's inside there. Let's take a look at somebody doing something like that with a sphere. It's been printed. This is Henry Segerman, and he's got a cell phone there, and he's just shining it into this thing he printed off. A plastic shape. A very special plastic shape, and what you'll see about it is, besides the fact that it does look a little bit like maybe a tulip that's starting to open, but besides that, what it also shows you is that there's a matrix there which is produced in a 3D fashion on the surface that the sphere is standing on, and how you make that matrix appear is just shine this light in like that. That is really cool. So a sphere, I suppose that's what happens on the back of your eye, isn't it? That, if you see a grid outside, that by the time that's mapped into the back of your eye, it must look sort of these diamond crest shapes like that. Now we're looking at the relationship between a flat, linear reality and a curved, spherical reality, aren't we? So when light shines in to your eye, it has to be mapped from a spherical structure to a planar, linear type structure, which is then like what you see. Otherwise, you'd hardly be able to draw a straight line, would you? Okay, I'm slightly kidding there, but you see the point I'm making? What is that? That shape thing. It's this. It's called a Raman sphere. Now, Raman was a mathematician, and he was a genius, and he was following up on work that Kepler has worked on. Kepler and Raman and Nash. This is very interesting stuff. This is about using a system of mathematical mapping in order to do this kind of stuff. And I'm not even going to get into it. The most complicated quantum stuff that comes in this is 0, 1, and 2. If you can handle the numbers 0, 1, and 2, you can deal with everything that we need to know about the quantum level, because you know what? Mathematics is really shape. And you don't need to get any more complicated than understanding shape. But this thing is what produces the matrix, this structure. Because we have this binary aspect in life. We have this spherical, and we also have this cubic or square. And this is the structure which is capable of uniting those two. Let's take a look at how it works. Let's take a look at how it works. And here it is working. Oh, look at that. That is so cool. So you can take a curved thing and you can project it out. And that's that light at the top is the light source in this Raman sphere. And the light source is the projection source. Remember, this is just mathematics, or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's reality. There is, of course, only one sphere there. You know, there isn't two. In other words, it's not like two eyes. You know, it's just one sphere mapping out onto this flat plane. But I suppose there was another sphere on the other side, and then you were to rotate this thing. It wouldn't look too dissimilar than two eyes either side of a mirror plane, would it? Is that what's going on here? Is that what real? It's not as simple as that, having said it. But you're looking at a mechanism here which is driving your perceptual and your quantum physical realities. But don't take my word for it. We're going to take Neil Armstrong's word for it. I'm just another asshole, and my opinion on these matters is no more relevant than anybody else's. Everybody gets to decide what they think is the best. But Neil Armstrong was onto this. His whole life was onto this. And let's take a little bit of a closer look at it. So I'll just zoom in on this. So there's another way of mapping out from a sphere. And it's not a matrix this time. We just use these lines of latitude and longitude, and that produces a nice disc kind of shape. But that's the same basic idea you're seeing there. So that's why you call the bottom of such a sphere a south pole, and that's why you call the top of it, where you can see that little arrow coming out at the top there, the north pole. And this is mathematics. You call it the north pole, and you do all sorts of complicated mathematics, but you just saw the mathematics simply done there with a little animated illustration. So let's see what's going on in here. I'll just zoom in closer. We'll go right into the sphere and have a look at what it looks like inside. Oh wow. Now we're in, and it's turning. Look at that curious little black disc thing there at the bottom, the South Pole thing. Wow, that's neat. You know what it's like? It's like an umbrella, and you're sort of looking at the umbrella as you twirl it. You know, I wonder, is there a sphere on the other side of that? You know, like an umbrella blows inside out. Suppose the umbrella blew inside out. Would that little black sphere there pop across the gap and sort of sit on the other side then? And would it have dimensions on that other side, or would it be completely non-dimensional? That is a very interesting structure. And that's quantum zero. That's what you're looking at there. Is quantum zero the origin point of everything? There are many quantum zeros. There are many south poles. There's one at the back of your head. It's the south pole, and your eyes are the north pole. That's the consciousness axis. But this thing in here, that's quantum zero. It's the source of everything. It's the sphere before anything. It's nothingness, and it's made of nothing. It's quantum zero. And it's what happens when you get that complete eclipsing. Followed by what? Followed by the re-emergence. The re-emergence of light. You know, that looks like an engagement ring. It's sort of what you give a girl after you give her a kiss. What is a kiss? Well, a kiss is, well, it's when you kiss, but it's also when two pool balls strike each other. You get a kiss. It's also a Planck spherical unit, the minimum structure, which is a little sphere, which is 1.61 by 10 to the minus 33 cm. That was too many numbers for me. Let's move on. Let's move on to this illustration of what such a sphere might look like. If you just gently lit it, as Justin Lawless did here in this illustration some years ago, just gently light that sphere. This is done with computer graphics, and light it from a distance. You'll see that kind of an effect. And I don't know if you can see the cornea type stuff going on. What is that light thing? I mean, what is that light thing? And the thing that we see there, and this kiss thing. Well, maybe that kiss is the point where the inside and the outside of the sphere are interacting with each other. Maybe that point is the point where the sperm entered the ovum. Maybe that point is the connection between the reality of a spherical, instantaneous structure and the illusion of a manifested three-dimensional world in which you and I live. Our left brain thinks it's reality, but it causes us to act in the illusion. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, illusion is life as well. But if this is a mirror plane, maybe there's another mirror plane that will be really important. Maybe you're looking at that mirror plane there now in our opening graphic sequence for this. You saw this, it's from the Lunar Reconnaissance Observatory, and thanks guys for doing this stuff, because you're letting us see, well, what Neil Armstrong saw, what others saw, is what it all looks like from round the back of the mirror, where all the writing is backwards, of course it is, but round the back of the mirror here, where all regeneration emerges out of. There's our regular moon that we all knew, and maybe this then explains why Neil Armstrong went round the back of the mirror, where the silver coating is, where the surface is deeper, a lot deeper. That's why it doesn't have all that lava that you see around the front. See, because the back of the moon is more solid than the front, as if it was a mirror. So that's the mirror plane there, and you can also see the mirror plane in there. I'll just bring it up just as we come to the point where it passes right the center. There we go. And you're swinging back and forth, or maybe you're not swinging back and forth here. Maybe the moon's stationary and you're simply swinging around behind it in this great arc till you get to there. The moon's stationary and you swing underneath it, and you swing back around to the front of it. Because, you see, the moon never moves in the sky for us like this, if only it did. Maybe it can't. Why is it like phase locked with us, with only one face? In fact, if we're looking for a quantum holographic structure in the universe, if we're looking for something which has one less dimension than everything else, and out of which everything is being generated, then the moon looks as flat as anything, doesn't it? It's the only flat thing that we can look up in the sky and see. Everything else spins. Why doesn't the moon spin in relation to us? It can't. The moon is the origin point of everything. Are we all, the entire universe, spinning around the moon, or is the moon spinning inside the universe? Does it really matter which is true? Perhaps both are true. And here we are in the middle of all this. As we play time games, or games with time. See, that's a pendulum. And that's like that swinging moon you were looking at. And that's like the left and right brain. And here comes the spherical reality across the mirror plane and into the real, bringing all its wave structure with it. That's the pendulum swinging across from right to left and back. And when it goes back, everything looks rock-like and flat and straight. But when it comes again, we see the curvature of everything. And there's two instantaneities in any pendulum. There is that instant of quantum, which is truly instant. And then there's this derived light speed instant, which is the one that we normally operate with. So as the pendulum swings, it swings into our time and pure absolute spherical time. And when it departs to the realm of spherical time, we find ourselves living in illusion. And then we come back into reality, back across the mirror plane, back into the zone of our friendly and well-known illusion. And here we are, suspended between the infinite and the well-timed. And this Earth, between sun and moon. This Earth, the mirror plane itself. So, that's our experience, isn't it? But don't take my word for it. You know, Neil left us a clue. I said that, didn't I? I'm going to show it to you right now. But to get there, we're going to have to take a look at something that Neil inspired. That Neil's achievement spurred on an entire space industry to set out to conquer this new domain in every way they could and to explore its distant limits. And in that, we find the confirmation we're looking for. We find Neil's signature seal of approval. It was on the 20th of August and the 5th of September that Voyager 2 and 1 took off from the Kennedy Space Center. And that was just 7 years after Armstrong's first step on the moon. An incredible adventure for the Voyager craft. And Voyager 1 is indeed, right now, the most distant man-made object from us. See, the sun is putting out a plasma streaming from the surface of the sun. And that plasma is hot, magnetically charged sundust. And because the sun is moving through space itself, that dust streams backwards, like you see with a comet. That heliosphere as the sun moves through interstellar space, which is full of a lot of stuff that would be dangerous to human beings, actually, cosmic rays and highly energetic particles which get deflected by the magnetic field around our sun and its heliosphere or sun sphere. So Voyager 1 and 2 were headed towards the bow or front of that heliosphere to see what lay there. That was the mission. One of the Voyagers headed to the south of the planetary plane, the other to the north, if there is a north and south in space. But you see it there, they headed in opposite directions, and Voyager 2 was going to take longer than Voyager 1 to reach the outer limit of our sun's influence of that solar mist. It was going to take decades. Then, in late summer of 2012, the scientists who were monitoring Voyager 1 picked up signs that the craft had indeed broken through. There was a steady noise of charged particles streaming from the sun far behind, but suddenly, on that day, it vanished. And at the same time, there was a spike in galactic cosmic rays coming from the outside. Now, they weren't sure initially, and it took 6 months or more before they got confirmation from some other instrumentation which detected electron plasma oscillations at a frequency that was very close to the value expected in interstellar space. That was confirmation. That didn't arrive for months, but it was Saturday, the 12th of August, 2012, when Voyager broke through. Now, something else happened on that day. On that very day, Neil Armstrong, the first human to set foot on the moon, died the same day that Voyager 1 broke through, Saturday, the 12th of August. He was 82. He had unexpectedly fallen foul of complications for heart surgery. Charles Bowden, the current NASA administrator, said that Neil Armstrong carried himself with a grace and humility that was an example to us all. And Armstrong's official NASA biographer, the historian Douglas Brinkley, described him as our nation's most bashful Galahad. Brinkley's characterization of Neil as a Sir Galahad, as a Grail-seeking knight, was sublimely apt. Indeed it was. Galahad had drawn forth a sword from out a rock and was deemed to possess a noble and untarnished spirit. Indeed, like Neil, Galahad had used a Grail ship to reach a distant shore and seek the Holy Grail. And after many adventures, Galahad found the court of King Peles, where he finally saw the Holy Grail. And as a reward, Galahad made the request that he be allowed to die at the time of his choosing. While making his way back to Arthur's court, Sir Galahad experienced such a glorious rapture that he made his request to die, and angels took him to heaven. That's the story of Galahad. Our modern Grail seeker, Neil Armstrong, also had a spirit which had been gifted with the power to determine his time of death. And he chose that time to perfectly coincide with Voyager's breaching of interstellar space. It was a human marvel which his own achievements had inspired and empowered. The man who set foot on the quantum South Pole left us an unmistakable clue. Here, at the place of his death, at that bow of the sun's voyage through space, you will find Neil Armstrong's Grail flag, now planted on the sun's boundary at our quantum North Pole. He solved it for us. And you'll find that that's entirely consistent with our understanding of the quantum realm. Let's do a simple rotation. Another one of those 90-degree turns, folks. And take a look at that North Pole from a slightly different angle. There we go. That's better. Now you can see it. And now you see the reason why it was so important and relevant that Neil made that visit with Hillary and Mike Dunn. Thanks, Mike. Because that's what we're looking at, from South Pole to North Pole. From the back of the moon to the front of the sun. Neil Armstrong was the solution to the Rayman sphere. Neil Armstrong is the living answer to the quantum realm. He showed us from source to destination, from birth to death. Of course, the moon. Where else for the source? And that's why the life within woman is timed by the moon, because that's a quantum point as well. Woman is quantum zero brought down to earth, gifting life. Let's do a couple of 90-degree rotations on this as well. One to the right and 90 degrees back, and we see where that puts you. It puts you here, gazing towards the moon. And if you do that with the sun in the background and the earth between, then you're taking Neil Armstrong's perspective on the universe, the one he's demonstrated to us. And speaking of perspective, it used to be said that the earth was flat and you could go to the edge of it and fall off. Well, I suppose if you can fall off infinity, that's true. But think of this as well. We're looking there at a Raman sphere. And does it really matter if you fall off the edge of that plane? If in fact you were being projected out from this sphere anyway, and your existence in the plane was always derivative and did not end and does not end when you fall off the edge of it, as Neil did when he reached the edge of the sun's limit, the outer extremity, the North Pole. The quantum reality bleeds through. Notice that our Earth South Pole is also rigid and our North Pole is open. Of course it's open, because we move from the origin, the south, to the north. We move from the center to the extremity, just like Neil. And I suppose if you want to escape the matrix, there's the matrix, and there's you. And you are not the matrix. You are the sphere, which is its own reflection. You are the South Pole, you are the origin, and you are your own destination. You are eternal, surely, if all of that is true. And so, let's take a look at the quantum underlying reality to explain the relevance of 1, 2, and 0. Quantum 1 you get by starting from the center of the back of the moon and drawing a line right through the earth and right through to the center of the sun and out the other side. And that axis line is the numeral 1, is 1 as a number. All of it as a system is 1 as an entity, O-N-E. And of course, quantum 1 looks like capital I, which is me, which is I, E-Y-E. You see how the quantum level's bleeding through into our language? Of course it is. Language is abstraction. Language is an operator. And it bleeds through. And then, of course, there is the quantum 2, where you see the full separation between the quantum zone and the physical zone. But that separation is temporary. And of course, all rejoins, and we are one. And that, if you like, is what allows you to have independent experiential life, because of this necessary separation between you and everything else. But you and everything else are one and are axial, radial, and quasi-rotating. Neil's gift to us is this understanding of quantum zero as he experienced it. And I've oversimplified the nature of the quantum level by simplifying it right down to the Raman sphere. It's more complicated than that. It involves shapes like this, and it involves, this one, which is a Raman sphere where you move the light source. Wow. And that gives you another mirror plane, a parabolic mirror plane, which is shape again, I think you'll agree, but understanding all that, really. If you understand that, you need to get out more, like me. There's also a a simplification which ignores this breakthrough by Justin Lawless, helping us to understand that the reason the quantum level requires 2 spins is that when you rotate anything, you create a 180-degree angle. You turn stuff upside down simply by rotating it. At a quantum level, you have inverted it, because the creation of an axis to do rotation creates that inversion. Look, you can see it there yourself. Okay. There's the inversion when you just hold an ordinary crystal sphere up and look at the world through it. You see, it's absolutely embedded. This quantum structure is there all the time if you know how to look for it. And this is the answer to the Raymond $1 million question. Well, Neil Armstrong's the answer to that question. Give him the money. But that's the half spin. That's the nature of the relationship between illusion. And I'm calling it illusion because, hey, it's a nice illusion. It's life. But it's still Maya. We have to understand that we transcend it with an eternal reality of our own. I've also oversimplified it by leaving out the need to turn the sphere inside out and the dynamics of that. So again, this is not just Raymond. This is Bill Thurston's Inside Out, where you turn a surface inside out without actually breaking it, causing it to crack. And you do this beautiful dance. Is that ribs I see there? Oh, that looked like ribs going by there. What's that? Oh, maybe we look into that in future explorations of this area, because we're leaving that out. Inside out. That's the difference between left and right. I mean, put a kitchen glove on your left hand, wet, and try and take it off. You'll find that actually you can easily pull it inside out. And then it's a right glove. So that's why the mirror plane, left and right, your body, and this is inside turning into outside. That's well worth looking at as well. And so also is this guy, Buckminster Fuller, absolute genius. He's showing us how spheres relate to each other. He's showing us compaction of information. He's showing us the compression of the sphere into nothingness and back. He's showing us a fundamental rotational characteristic of space. He's showing us how space expands, because the creation of an axis within the sphere is the same as the opening of the doubled over arms in the vector equilibrium, which is what he's demonstrating to us there. And it has arms which fold back on each other and then open up. Hey, you've got arms like that as well. You've got legs like that as well, which sort of pivot in the middle, fold on each other and then open up, and then you can run around and do stuff. That's what I mean about the quantum level. It's bleeding through into our reality. It is the structure of your body, for crying out loud. And I believe it's the structure of reality. It's the structure of life and death. And that's why it's called regeneromics. I suppose if we were to give full credit to Neil, if it was okay for the Son of God to come down to earth and be the Son of Man, I suppose it's okay too for a Son of Man to go to heaven on a moon quest and to seek that union with the divine. All of these issues are worth exploring, and there are issues I've been looking into for a decade or more, but now I know we're on the right track, thanks to Neil and those who have gone before, who have left out Ernst Mach. I've left out Schrödinger. There is one person I wouldn't leave out though, and that's the late Milo Wolf. And this is dedicated in memory of Milo. Milo wrote Schrödinger's universe, and he looked into the wave structure of reality. I interviewed Milo some years ago, and in the next presentation on regeneromics, I'll bring you some of that interview and how Milo's insights into the fundamental wave structure of everything. In other words, there's no matter, there's no actual hard stuff, particles. It's all done with waves. And that was Milo's breakthrough. All part of the solution. Many great minds have worked on this. And Here's a little teaser. Here's Milo in a brief clip being interviewed by Jeffrey Hasselhurst.
1955, I took a course in quantum mechanics, and this was a graduate course, and I had never had any course in quantum mechanics. I assumed I was very stupid. I never understood the origin of de Broglie waves, which says that a particle goes along like this. It has a wave which is inversely proportional to its momentum. Planck's constant divided by the mass times the velocity. That's called the de Broglie wavelength because de Broglie first proposed it. And of course, de Broglie didn't know where it came from either. Nobody ever knew. But I didn't know that they didn't know.
So you thought you were...
I just thought I was stupid. I never opened my mouth. I just kept thinking about that thing, and it just bothered me all the time. So I kept on studying and investigating it. And of course, the result is this book. This tells all of that work.
Milo was same kind of character as Neil was, an unassuming and humble man, but a great mind. And it's appropriate to remember him because, in fact, he worked at MIT on the moon mission for NASA, did Milo. And I'll be back with more on him, more on his ideas, and some clips from our interview, which we did on these issues and the nature of space in another presentation on regeneromics.com, and we look into many other. I'm not really sure where we're going with this because, like you, I've only found this confirmation from Neil recently, and it's pulled everything together for me. I hope it's been useful to you, and I hope it's been useful to those who knew and love Neil. Thanks, Neil. Okay, I'll be back with more on Neil, more on quantum level, more on space, more... Hey, we might even get into the numbers 3, 4, and 5. How about that? If I could get Justin Lawless on, we could go all the way to 9. Quantum stuff does not have to be complicated. We need just ordinary understanding and people like Neil Armstrong to guide the way. All right. I will be back soon with more. If you'd like to get notified of upcoming episodes, then just subscribe to the channel. But in the meantime, this has been Fintan Dunn. See you soon.